Now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, and I think you will find this person delightful. Selena Deckelman is a major contributor to Postgres and a data architect at Mozilla. She's been involved with free and open source software since 1995, and she began running conferences for Postgres in 2007. In 2012, she founded PyLadies PDX, the Portland chapter of PyLadies. She founded Open Source Bridge, Postgres Open, and speaks internationally about open source, databases, and community. She is an advisor to the ADA Initiative, an organization dedicated to increasing the participation of women in open source and technology communities. Please join me in welcoming Selena Deckelman.
Hi there, good morning. So I really like birds. It's not very easy to see that, but that's a hummingbird my husband took a picture of. So if anybody's going to see doing any bird watching in the area, I don't know if any of you do that, please find me. I'd love to go. I want to say thank you very much to the CSTA for inviting me here this morning. I've really enjoyed my time here so far. I went to some workshops yesterday, and I've learned so much already from the people that I've talked with. It's really honestly an honor to be able to come here and speak to a group of teachers, because I honestly don't really know that many of you. I would call myself a beginner teacher. I've just started writing lessons to teach adult women who are learning or practicing their programming. That's what I do with PyLadies. And all of what I'm going to share today is based on my personal experiences working with these first-time adult programmers. And my plan today is to tell you a little bit about me and what motivates me to do what I'm doing now and contribute to open source, share with you some of the successes that we've had in these beginner adult programs, because there's actually quite a few of them right now popping up in the open source world. And finally, what I think these open source communities might be able to offer you and your classrooms. I'm going to give away my punchline. Don't want to right now. When it comes to working with the open source community, of which I'm a member, and I suppose I'm a leader in those communities, but there's many, many leaders without any kind of central authority. I can say for sure today that we will come to you. I've been working for the past couple of years to try to find like-minded people in the open source communities who are interested in education, who are interested in pedagogy, who want to see the efforts that we have with adults to see those efforts get better. And anyway, they're interested in doing whatever they can just to meet you, because it actually is fairly difficult to find CS teachers just in general. So if you're interested in having an open source person come to your classroom, send me an email. I know I'm setting myself up a little bit here, but I would be delighted if I had 300 emails in my inbox when I get back to Portland tomorrow. So anyway, please contact me. I've spent the last 16 years going to conferences. I'd really love to use that for something useful. So talking about what motivates me, I want to talk something about somebody that I know. Her name's Julie Horvath, something that she wrote about recently. She works for GitHub, and she started this project called the Passion Projects, where she's inviting women who work in open source technologies to come in and give talks at GitHub in San Francisco. And they record them and they publish them. And so far it's been really great. A couple great women have come and talked, but there's been a little bit of criticism of her efforts, and she wrote this blog post to kind of talk about it. And she said this thing, the first sentence of this blog post just really, really got me. It really stopped me. And what she said was, I didn't grow up thinking I could do anything I wanted to. And when I look at that, I just get a little bit overwhelmed, actually, by how much it matches what the women I've taught say about what they think about programming. I see this, sorry, almost every time that I walk into a classroom where I'm teaching these beginning programmers. This photo is from a class where we were teaching algorithms for the first time to some people. And afterward, the women said that they felt so confident that they could finally explain what algorithms were, and that before they'd come to these groups, they'd like literally never thought about how algorithms related to programming, or what it might mean for them to implement their own algorithms. I've come to think of this as a possibilities problem, that people really don't know what's possible for them in computer science. And in my teaching of women in particular, these women, they really have no idea. And so when I think about what I really need to do, so when I'm working on these volunteer projects that we do to teach people, I think about it as like just broadening the scope of what people think is possible and how computer science can be relevant in their daily lives. And I meant this sort of as a joke. We will often attach engineering to like some problem that we're trying to solve if we're like processifying it. So we have possibility engineering here. And I think the two things that I've like decided to focus on is first of all the awareness, just like trying to help raise awareness about what is possible, and secondly, figuring out what the appropriate kind of encouragement is for people once they become aware that there are all of these possibilities that are out there for them, specifically in computer science. And I tried to think about this stuff and communicate this stuff to other open source communities so that they can kind of work on their outreach in a more productive way. And this is a picture of a sticky note of the emotional roller coaster that I think a lot of people go through when they're first learning how to program or maybe first learning a language. And at the top, I've got euphoria. Sorry, there's some Chinese characters on there from a friend of mine who translated some slides for me for another talk. But anyway, so it's just you got euphoria up at the top and despair down at the bottom. And you just kind of go through this process of like figuring something out and then it not working and then going back and forth. And in sort of observing what's been happening for the adults, this is kind of what I think it looks like when people just totally give up. We get people who will have these high points where they're attending these workshops and like having a good time, and they try a few exercises and it's not going so well. But since they're in the workshop, somebody will like help them out and like encourage them. But then when they go back home, they have these very persistent IT problems, right? Like they make some little tiny configuration change and their whole environment just stops working. And then they just never come back to our workshops. And I've seen this over and over again. So something that we've been working on with PyLadies is figuring out how to stop that downward spiral and create introductory materials that really focus in on that sort of missing manual of how do you set up your programming environment in the beginning, and particularly when you're working with open source software. So this is what I think it sort of looks like for the people who have tended to stick with us. They attend these workshops, maybe they go, they have some trials and tribulations, but they start going regularly to the hackathons and meetups. And in our case, we're having weekly, sometimes twice weekly meetings to keep people in the communities, to give them a routine, something that as adults, you're really not, unless you go back to school, there's just not a lot of opportunities for you to have these sort of learning routines with groups. But anyway, so we set up these meetups and hackathons, and it's proven to be really effective for us. So this is really obvious in this room. I almost didn't even put this slide in here, but I think it's important, as a starting point for a discussion, that we just have to always keep this in mind. And that getting kids or adults to understand the basics of what a computer is and does, how it stores data, about what, where, and how, and when we do things, We need people to understand these concepts in the same way that we need people to read. And when our society is increasingly assisted and augmented and even controlled with the help of computers, I really think that our democracy is at stake when people have no idea how these things that they're using every day work. And I think these groups, like the PyLadies, but there's lots more, nonprofits like Mozilla, which I work for, like we're here to ultimately empower people to spread this knowledge, to dispel myths about what the technology can and can't do, and to invite exploration of computers and software. And these groups, though, are largely helping people who are already out of high school. So that brings me to what I thought I knew about computers and computer science when I was in high school. I thought that computers were used for games, and I really didn't know anything else about them. I was pretty sure that only antisocial boys were into computers, and therefore I really shouldn't, I shouldn't be into them. And for a relative who will remain nameless, I was familiar with really inappropriate animated ASCII art. And so, I thought that there was this sort of seedy underbelly, to what then wasn't the internet, but BBSs. And so my lesson that I take away from that is that, there's just this overwhelming problem of explaining computer science to the world, and but we really need to focus on those first few principles, because otherwise people are going to come to their own conclusions about what it is, and those conclusions are really inaccurate. And this was a list, I don't know if you can really, it's pretty tiny, but this is a list of all of the jobs of people that I knew that I could fit on this page reasonably. We've got computer science, CS teacher, Python developer, system analyst, system administrator, Linux kernel hacker, Postgres consultant, on and on and on. There's all of these types of jobs. Some of them have nothing to do with programming, and most people don't even know they exist. Some of them have been created in the last 10 years. Some of them have been created in the last 5 years. Explaining this to people is, I think, really important. There's just sort of an explosion of opportunity here for people. So how did I, a person who thought that computers were for gaming, for boys, and probably were a little bit seedy, get from there and thinking about that to thinking it was possible to join an open source community to actually going to change something that I really cared about? Well, in 2000, and this is a link to the email because the internet remembers everything, I made my very first contribution to an open source project. I was working at Intel, and I was managing some networking equipment to support, some monitoring, something like that. And I'd found a problem with the way that I'd set my system up. And to fix it, I needed to modify 7,000 files or something like that. So I wrote this little script, and then a little while later, somebody on this mailing list that I was watching, because I was trying to learn about this tool, said that they had the same problem. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. So I was like, I can seem really smart on this mailing list. I'm gonna send my code. So I cleaned up the little script and I emailed it out. I posted it, and then something happened next that totally changed my life, blew my mind. And the maintainer of the project, this person that I'd really kind of elevated to maybe demigod status, he was super smart, and he started asking me a bunch of questions. He's like, what's your environment like? Tell me about what you're doing. And he was like, would you mind if I took your code and I just committed it to our repo? I was like, what? This software was something that I was using every day that was really important to my work. And he was like, yeah, I'm just gonna, shove your Perl script that's not very good. Honestly, the code, you can go read it. He's like, he just added it to the repo. And not only that, but he thanked me and he added me to the contributors list, just right there. And at that moment, like, I had changed the source code of a tool that I used every day, and now other people were going to be getting my code every time they downloaded this thing. It was just so incredibly great, like, just that moment. And you know, and I know people used it because I got bug reports later. So, so yeah, I mean, it was really a transformative moment. So, so I'm super passionate about open source software, and I really think that collaborating with teachers are awesome. Like, I haven't had too many opportunities. Like, I spent some time searching for teachers. I actually used the code.org website to track some people down, and I've met I think now with maybe like 12 teachers in their classrooms. Uh-oh, terrible. I think that animated GIF was the death of my presentation. Okay. Oops, gave that away. Anyway, so I use code.org. I met some teachers. I spent some time in some classrooms. I really don't think I've done enough of it. I've gotten quite a bit of help, you know, with the lessons that I've written, but I really would like more, and I would like more collaboration. And really selfishly, what I think that the open source communities can learn from classroom teachers really is how to scale our teaching. Because right now we're really struggling. We spend a lot of time on lessons that are not very effective. You know, if we get maybe a quarter of our classes doing, you know, completing the intended tasks, we're considering that success. We really honestly could be doing a lot better, and we could do that with your help. And some of the things that I think that the open source community and teachers have in common: we're often working with minimal resources. The open source communities themselves tend to not have a lot of money, and they also don't have very many people, period, working on things, and so they have to figure out how to do effective things with a very small number of people. And teachers, of course, you're incredibly time constrained. We tend to teach just anybody that shows up, you know, like I show up on a mailing list and start throwing code at people, you know, that happens every day. More often, though, we really get a lot of bug reports, and we try to educate people about what's happening and how we can fix their software. And I think that we really all believe that we can change the world by sharing ideas. That's like fundamental to what people believe about their work in open source and on the internet, really. And I think teachers do that every day. And my dream here is that we'll find a way to provide effective computer science education for everyone. I think in the open source world, we really are going to continue to focus on adults for some time, just because we don't have enough people who know about educating kids in our communities. There's more efforts in that area, but I think together we could do a lot better. And part of that work is really finding this minimal set of concepts to help people feel empowered about using their computers, investigating their computers, exploring what's going on, understanding what they're reading in the newspaper, and being able to ask questions without feeling ashamed or stupid, and that they can actually learn more about these things if they choose. So, you all didn't really sign up to do that, to teach adults about all these things, to try to make this universal program, but I really am, and am very interested in seeing this happen, particularly through the work that I'm doing with PyLadies. But before I ever did that, my first teaching experience was teaching a class called Cyber Seniors. And I think this actually informs a lot of the decisions that I've made since about how to teach this material to people who have never really explored their computers before. And it was a program developed by the Multnomah County Library System, which is a really great program, and they provide actually quite a bit of training. I had to go to 2 days of training about the library, and then a little more training about how to work with patrons and stuff like that. So when I went to these classes, what the people who came to these classes wanted to learn, first they wanted to find medical information online, because they were often spending a lot of time either at home or maybe going to the library, and they didn't have a lot of time, so they needed to figure out how to search. They really wanted to know how to use email. And third thing they were very interested in was online dating. And yeah, that was unexpected for me. So, sorry, showing my biases here. Showing my age really, but anyway, okay, so what I ended up teaching, and most of this was in the pre-cooked curriculum that they gave us. First of all, parts of a computer, CPU, memory, disk, because a lot of these folks were trying to like buy their first computer and like bring it home, so they're interested in that. How to use a mouse, and this was like really actually difficult at first, but I eventually got it down to maybe like 15 minutes. But yeah, that was surprising to me. I didn't realize that was going to be an issue. How to create accounts on websites, of course, because then you do that for email. Where to type in URLs for searches. I didn't realize how big of a problem this was either, but it was a transformative moment for a lot of people to figure out that what each of these boxes were, because they're not labeled, and how to get out of a confusing situation once you were in it. And finally, how to ask for help. And we did that by providing them with vocabulary, by practicing, what it would be like to walk up to a librarian and ask them a question. And also, I think that was really empowering to the people who took these classes. So that was my first teaching experience. More recently, last September, I joined PyLadies. I started this PyLadies chapter. And the reason why that happened was I met a ton of other women who were really excited about Python, who were excited about the mission of PyLadies, and they'd started having some pretty great successes teaching people in the San Francisco area primarily. So their goal is very simply is just to get women together who code, and they're encouraging of people who are just beginning, there's a lot of other people who are industry veterans, and all of the different chapters have published all of the curriculum that they're doing online. It's not necessarily simple to find, but it is all collected on the PyLadies.com website in one way or another. So my chapter is about 140 women. We have 1 to 2 meetings per week, and it's I don't go to every single one of those meetings. We've distributed responsibility for who does what, and we have a weekly hackathon at a cafe on the weekend, and then we have these sessions where we're actually trying to teach some stuff or learn new things. And since September, we've had 7 of these women get jobs, and in the tech industry in Portland. And I put that on there just because it was really surprising to me that it was that simple to go from someone being interested and having an aptitude, and some people having some experience, teaching themselves online, to encouraging them to actually go out and get a job in our industry. So, yeah, it's been very, again, eye-opening that it wasn't really all that much effort. And I'm going to share these slides. I already actually uploaded them online, so you don't need to write down these URLs. I should have said that earlier. But anyway, this is where I posted the lessons that I've taught. I have 8 lessons there. I took the POGL workshop yesterday, so I'm actually I have now a format for how I could actually structure these. So I'm going to go rewrite them and put that up there, but you could look at what I've put up there already now. So the women who have gone through this program, what do they say that they get out of it? Well, they say that they get new skills for sure, which I'm glad, because otherwise, I'd feel pretty bad about my teaching. They say that they get peer support, and this is something new for a lot of the women there. A lot of them have never actually talked with another woman about programming before, so it's a new experience and something that they enjoy. They have some structure and routine. All this should sound sort of familiar, I imagine, to the teachers. And they gain confidence, about what they're intending to do, either in their careers or just developing their skills. And one woman said that it was the best year of her life because she had been searching for something, work that she was going to do. She was temping. And she'd actually studied programming in college, but then once she graduated, was like, oh, I'll never be able to get a job in that industry. But through her connections with these other women, not even people who were working at other companies, but just other people who were also learning how to program and sharing their experiences, she decided to go and apply for a job and got it. So I have a list of the concepts and skills that we teach in these classes, and these are pretty universal across the different programs that I've looked at. We start out with distributed revision control, which is not always how people start out, but this is an increasingly important part of working as a professional developer now. And we teach Git, which is not the most friendly tool, but once they learn some basic things about the tool, they tend to just run with it. We teach people in pairs, almost always, so that they can learn from each other, and also so that they can see that there's never really just one way to write a piece of code. We teach testing, unit testing primarily. We try to teach people about documentation, and we give them resources for publishing that documentation. And we try to teach people about automation, because that's also increasingly part of being a professional programmer, either continuous integration or some other form of automated deployment. And I did a little searching around for education resources for each one of these skills that we're teaching. And I found that there are quite a few companies that are providing free resources, which some of you may already know about. But GitHub, for example, offers free private repos for sharing for you as a teacher and your class. So you can have a private environment that's safe, and the kids aren't having to expose their code to the world, and that you can control. For pair programming, we use this thing called IPython Notebook, which if you're into Python, you should really check out IPython Notebook. It's amazing. It's a web-based environment for writing and executing Python. And we also use Skype for pair programming. For testing, Python comes with unit test and nose. For documentation, there's this site called readthedocs.org, and you can just push code, push your documentation up there for free. It's pretty cool. And then for automation, we often turn to Amazon for this stuff, and they also have an education program where they will provide credits so that you can use those services for free. So those are some of the technical skills. The other stuff that we focus on are these sort of yesterday a lot of people are calling them soft skills, but they're just these other concepts and skills that are not necessarily technology specific. One of the most important things that I try to teach people is how to engage in peer mentoring and how to talk about technology. I'm mostly working with women, so how to talk about technology with other women and the vocabulary and the style that people use when they're talking about it. We talk a lot about tolerance and respect. First of all, for people to be tolerant and respectful to each other, of course, but also when they go out into the open source world and they're interacting with random people on the internet, that they should expect and demand that from everyone that they interact with. We teach people how to communicate in a distributed and asynchronous fashion, which is usually pretty uncomfortable and unusual for people at first. We use stuff like IRC, Internet Relay Chat. We send email that sometimes people don't respond to for days or weeks. We're using bug trackers where you don't really know who's going to be reading things and responding. And so getting people comfortable with that ambiguity and knowing that it's okay, the communication style differences. We try to teach people how to be persistent in these environments, because it can be a little discouraging to kind of be out there diving into open source community all on your own. And we also, again, teach people how to do this bug reporting, how to ask for help in ways that are going to be heard to the communities that they're reaching out to. So that's my list of like all the stuff that we're trying to work on. I really think it could be a lot better if we all work together. Again, you know, with open source communities, there's not any one particular organization. Here's just a few of the ones that I've worked with. You know, as I said, I contribute to PyLadies. I work directly with OpenHatch. I'm a Stealth board member there. Software Carpentry is a Mozilla project that's been around for about 15 years. They actually published a really great paper just, I think, the other day. And that is about trying to get scientists to get some programming training. It's really great. But anyway, there's all these other projects out there that you could look into if you're interested in seeing the type of curriculum that they're developing. So that brings me back to like what I think these organizations that are all trying to work on these beginner programmer problems, what I think that they really can offer teachers. So I think that we're pretty good at following directions. Not all of us were the greatest students back in the day, so I want to be honest about this. But if you tell us how we could structure our lessons, if you tell us what a good presentation about what we do for work would be for your students, we can follow instructions and we can put together really great presentations that would be effective, more effective than they are today. We're really great at distributed asynchronous communication, which can be very frustrating for people who don't like that style. But we can help in contacting groups of people that, you know, are okay with this on your behalf and finding information for you and bringing it back. I'm going to say in the next one that we have a lot of time, but because we have a lot of time on our hands, we spend a lot of time online evangelizing about the projects that we work on. And I know that a lot of people would love to know more about what teachers are doing so that they could also talk about those efforts and how to make our communities a lot better. And like I said, we have a lot of time on our hands. Clearly, just look at the internet. And that animated GIF that I had earlier, someone made that. And you really should take advantage of how much time we have on our hands. So if there are a few things that you could do once you're out of this keynote, moving on with the rest of your summer and maybe into the fall, I would say the first thing that you could do is invite us to speak in your classrooms. We would be happy to do it. Like I said, just send me an email and I will find someone to come to your classroom wherever it is. You can apply for scholarships, and I've actually talked with a few people here who have attended open source conferences on scholarship. Many of these conferences provide that. This is just a short list of conferences off the top of my head that I knew had scholarships, but if you're interested in an open source technology and a particular conference, definitely, again, you can just email me, contact me, and I will connect you with the right people. I've been attending conferences for a long time. I go to somewhere around like 20 a year. Ugh, it's too many. But I know most of the organizers of these things, and they'd be happy to help. I encourage you to attend an inexpensive Linux or free software conference in your area. They're frequent, not always in the center of the country, I apologize, but definitely on the coasts. And they're usually very inexpensive or free, sort of like this conference, and there's a lot of great information and great people there. And I'd really encourage you to share any lessons that you have online using a Creative Commons license so that other people can be inspired by and use your material. And if you're worried maybe that your lessons are not good enough, just go back to that link that I provided earlier of mine for some inspiration. And finally, I would love it if you told me what else we can do, because I don't know. I'm not in your classrooms. I've talked with a few people, and they've told me a little bit about what would be most helpful to them, but I would really love to know more, and I'd love to use whatever resources I have. You know, I do work for Mozilla. It's fairly recent, but my employer is really supportive of education efforts, and there's some things that Mozilla is doing around like webmaker and web badges they're interested in making that stuff better, and we would love to hear from you. So I wanted to wrap this up with a story about a friend of mine who, just last week I was having a beer with him, and I told him I was coming to this conference, and he was telling me about how it was that he ended up going to college. It just really wasn't on his parents' radar at all. It just wasn't something that they thought was very important. He'd planned on probably going and working in a mill or, a machine shop once he graduated. And but one night, it was like December or so of his senior year, he was out with some friends, and they were all talking about like all the colleges that they'd sent applications to. And he was like, "Oh, that's something that you do." And one of the guys was like, "Oh, are you kidding me? Like you haven't applied to any of these places?" So he just like pulled out of some folder that he had because they were like over at his house, pulled out an application form for the I think it was the University of Puget Sound, and I was like, "Here, just fill this out and send it in, and we'll at least get you applied to one college before the end of the month." And so he did that, and he got accepted. And that guy is Ward Cunningham. He's the inventor of the wiki, which is the technology, of course, that underpins Wikipedia and the world's encyclopedia and really every other wiki that's out there now. He made the first one. And I just think about that story and like what might have happened if he hadn't gone out and hung out with those friends that night. Maybe we wouldn't have Wikipedia. So it's funny how just very small acts like that really, really change people's lives and the world, really. So I really think that what we're here, this is a thing from Harold and the Purple Crayon. Does any of you have that little book when you were a kid? See that? Yeah, love that book. It's so awesome. But for those of you, very few of you, who don't know this story, Harold just sort of imagines this world around him. He's got this purple crayon, and he just draws it as he goes along. It's a really, really great book. And I think that what we're doing here is drawing these doors, not just opening them. I think we're still at that stage, and it's a really exciting stage, and I'm really happy to be part of it. So thank you all very much. Please email me, and we'll find some open source folks to speak in your classrooms. Thanks. And so I hear that I should take questions. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I think the idea of having volunteer speakers in classrooms is outstanding. But there may be, I want to somehow connect you with our evening keynoter, which was HadiPartovi@Code.org, to find a way to organize it so that those who want to feed into the system, those who want to draw from the system, can go to one place and do that. There's really lots of emails from people in terms of scaling up.
Yeah, I think it would be really great too. Yeah, it's a perennial problem, this like maintenance of software to do these things, right? But yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I would like to encourage people to reach out to PyLadies in their area. I was really lucky and had the PyLady representative in Austin actually reach out to me, who will be coming out to my classroom this coming year. But even probably greater than that, she's willing to help run professional development for teachers in our area.
Yeah, so I'll just repeat that for those that didn't hear. So the PyLadies chapters, there's one in particular in Austin. It's this one's led by Barbara Charette, and there's a couple other really amazing women working there. But Barbara has been reaching out to different teachers. And I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Jake? She found Jake, and she offered to come to his classroom and also do professional development workshops about Python. She's a Django expert, knows a little bit about databases, some other stuff, and she was happy to teach classes to teachers if you want that. Yes?
I teach in the city in Philadelphia, and a lot of the groups that I would like to reach out to on an after-school basis don't have computers. So I guess my question is, when you organize these teaching experiences, how do you access technology that to provide them for the classroom?
Most people do bring their own laptops. Sometimes they borrow them from work or their partners or whatever. We have had some offers from organizations. So in the Portland area, we have this thing called Free Geek, and they actually have a lab that you can reserve for free. But it is a little bit of a challenge. I think another thing that we've tended to take advantage of now is that a lot of the tech companies that are kind of going from that startup phase to maybe the small business size, maybe they're like 20 to 50 people, they tend to be really interested in getting people to come into their spaces. And so they've been sponsoring us, they've been encouraging us to come into those, and they've also offered laptops and labs for us to use. But yeah, there's not, unfortunately, like a one-size-fits-all. Like, if you get connected to the local business community, sometimes they can really, really help out. Yes?
Are you involved in Meetup.com?
I use Meetup.com. There's a question about Meetup.com, and I use Meetup.com for PyLadies, and it's been amazing. It really has been a very effective tool for reaching women.
I'm involved in Philadelphia area also with TechEd.
Oh yeah, TechEd.
They have on Meetup once a month, which any teachers are welcome to come to, and you'll find out a lot of things that are happening right in Philly or whatever city you're in.
Yeah.
Get connections out there, a lot of networking going on.
That's really cool. So TechEd is a meetup that is in Philly, probably in other cities, definitely something that people should look into. And I don't know if the CSTA chapters have thought about using Meetup, but I would say it's worth looking into, because a lot of people will just search for topics on Meetup and then find you in their area. So yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. There's somebody back there?
You have two slides that show a small difference between the people that continue on in computer science and those that dive down into the lower half of your graph. And then on another slide, you have GitHub and Git as sort of fundamental tools to teach the beginner. And to me, would you say more? Why Git? Why GitHub?
He's asking why Git and why GitHub. This is not going to be a very pedagogically sound answer, but fashion. It really is the fashion currently to know Git. And when these folks that come to these classes, when they walk away understanding that particular tool, it's a signal that gets them in the door with people. I think that any other revision control, like if you were designing a rigorous curriculum, any revision control system I think would probably work, and they all have their quirks and pros and cons. But in my case, it's very much a tool that the first day they go into the job, they'll use. So that's why. Yes?
I have a question and maybe a request.
Yeah.
When I look at your story of working with women and your success in piloting, I want to take that story and present it to education boards across the state, that if we had done this, what you're doing at this level now, if we do that today in middle school, then we would be addressing some of these confidence and can I do this, not only girls, but for all students, and exposure early. So I'm not sure, my question to you would be, with Mozilla, are you participating, or Mozilla participating in the advocacy efforts at the policy level? And then if you're not, the question would be, we would like to invite you to really try to take part in the issue of addressing education at
Yeah. So the comment for those that didn't hear was about addressing this for all middle schoolers, this confidence issue, and what we can do to introduce these concepts early so that we're not dealing with these confidence and kind of shame. I would call them shame issues at older ages, and would Mozilla engage at a policy level? So Mozilla has a few efforts in things. I think for the most part, Mozilla as an organization is focusing on the web maker and the web badges and these sorts of efforts. It's certainly something that that I can put time and energy into, and that I can lobby inside the company for. It's definitely something that the company, us as a nonprofit, that's part of our mission and that we care about. I don't know that I can, but I definitely am committed to doing that, and I can do whatever I personally can, and I will make an effort to lobby more inside of Mozilla. Yeah.
I noticed that you referenced Black Girls Code.
Yes.
The Urban Tech Core.
Urban Tech Core.
On Facebook.
Okay.
It's gathering. It's not minority. The thing about having computers, they don't have it.
Yeah.
And there's PTA and Urban Tech Fair who gather together people, but also the Latino community. Some of the things coming through the University of Texas, where they're doing things on weekends.
Yeah.
Computer labs. And computer labs should be closed up on Saturday.
I know, right? I know, they usually are still, the computers are still turned on, right? I mean, come on. Yeah, I would love a list of those organizations. I know I heard of one, I think, of the three that you mentioned before, so I would love that list.
35 chapters all over the United States, and on Saturdays we're in people's basements and offices and wherever we can be.
Yeah.
Try to share.
Yeah, no, I would love some connections. I think that my list covers, again, open source is largely a white and male-dominated community, and so I only find the people I find. Someone over here, yes, you? Yeah.
I just think that it's very important for us to reach out to the parents of the elementary and middle school students. I would like to know if anybody has any suggestions about that, because I'm the only teacher in my district. And it's very difficult to get anybody to hop on the train and try to get these kids to think more about science, technology, engineering. And it makes no sense to me, because that's where the jobs are now. If you're spending all this money to send your child to school, don't you want them to be able to graduate and have a job?
Yeah.
And that's what I don't get. So somewhere the disconnect is happening in the parental globe, because they keep trying to send their child into something and be very proud they're going to a huge school, which is a wonderful accomplishment. But isn't it more important that when they graduate that they have an opportunity to use the skills that they learned in the last 4 years?
Yeah. Do you have a comment on this? Or?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that tech people tend to do, because we're comfortable, is we tend to associate in that bubble.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult for us to get out of that bubble. One of the things that I challenge you all to do is get involved with your local association for middle level education. These are middle school teachers and administrators. And if you want to make an impact in the schools and get out of this bubble, I love this bubble. You guys are my people. But if we need to make an impact on the schools and we want to get to middle school, those are the groups. There are state chapters all over the country. There's a national conference every year. We have, as technology people, as computer science teachers, we have to get out and talk to regular teachers and regular administrators and make them understand what you're saying.
So thank you. So on the subject of parents, engaging parents, there's a organization that I think in my area that had a really interesting program. And what they do is they have a half-day camp in the summertime where they invite 8th grade, and probably you could do this even earlier, but they invite 8th grade parents before the kids are going into high school for a half day, and they get together and they separate the parents and the kids, and they have the parents in one room talking to technologists, like folks in my area. It's actually a lot funded by Intel, but they'll have like people talking about all the different types of jobs that are out there and how hard it is to find people to do those jobs, and they talk directly to the parents about this. And then in the other room, they have the kids like, doing experiments, like, meeting cool people, like having fun. And then they bring the parents and the kids together for a closing session, and they found that to be really effective for changing people's minds. Another thing I want to say is I was talking with, I think, Patty yesterday, and I don't know if it was the CSTA did a survey or someone did a survey about parental attitudes about computer science and technology, because there for a long time was this myth that all the jobs were being outsourced and overseas, and so no one should ever, study technology again in our country. Anyway, so a lot of people believe that. And I guess in this past year when they did a survey of parents to parents, it's just like that attitude has gone way, way down. Far fewer people. So there is hope in the future that future parents that you meet will not have that attitude. So I think that half-day program is really cool, and I think the attitudes are probably changing a little bit. Yes?
One thing that I just heard, and it was really cool, and I want to follow up on it a little bit, is you mentioned a good resource in your area. I know in Hartford, we have the Trinfo Cafe, and Trinity College has a computer lab that they set up that's classes. It would be neat for us to make a list of resources on a state-by-state basis and just have each chapter give into it of all the places we know that people can go in and have a class.
Yeah.
That are open resource labs, because I know that they're out there, and if we have a centralized list, it would be a really cool thing. So that's one thing that I wanted to throw off of that I thought would be a really cool idea. The other thing, in answer to your question in part, that I thought was a really cool idea, it's kind of similar to what you were saying, but Chima Uche, who couldn't be here today, who is an absolutely dynamic person and head of the Connecticut CSTA, did the most wonderful thing on CS Ed Week. She's in GAMIS, which is an inner city academy for math and science. It is not like Boston's schools that are examination schools. It's a lottery school. She had CS Ed Week that was almost like a science fair thing. She had an open house, and she had little workshops set up all over the place, and she used students as teachers because she didn't have enough staff to do it. And she had people able to go around different sites and learn different things. So they learned a little Scratch here, they learned a little something else someplace else, or App Inventor. And the cool thing about that was not just what they learned, but that inner city kids were teaching. And here you've got parents realizing and looking at their kids in a whole different way.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
It was just, if you send an email to me or Chinma or anybody in the CTCSTA, we'll hook you up with her, because what she did was phenomenal.
That's really cool.
Yes, okay. One other thing I think we're guilty of as teachers is we all have four-year degrees. And we think that the magic bullet is the four-year degree in CS. There are a lot of jobs out there that start long before that four-year degree. And I see a lot of kids, they don't want to go on to a four-year degree. They don't want all the CS stuff. They're web designers, they're graphic designers. And yeah, maybe 10, 15 years down the road, they finish that degree. They didn't pay for it. Their company did.
Yeah.
So I think we have got to educate parents, and I think we need to realize too that fewer and fewer jobs are four-year degree jobs in the country. Less than 25% of the jobs in the latest state will be a four-year degree or higher. A lot of them are 1 year, 2 years training, and I'm not saying that there isn't a place for that, but we need to realize there's a building block system. So if we have kids, we tend to, I think, have a narrower view of what computer science is. Your job is stuff like graphic designers. People don't think of that as a computer science degree, but it's all involved in that IT umbrella. And I think we need to realize that there's a lot of opportunities out there and educate parents about what those opportunities are. I don't think we tell them, well, we're closing off this four-year degree. But I think you've got to realize most people can't afford a four-year degree now. So how else can you pay for it?
Yeah.
Can you get these other things? Can we use these
Yep. Yes.
Did you say that your slides with all those great links were available online, and if so, where?
Yep, and I think they'll probably send an email out, but I put them on Speaker Deck, so the thing if you search for me around, oops, that's not mirrored. Yeah, they'll put it on the conference site, but if you there's this site called speakerdeck.com, and it's got all my slide decks on it from the last year or so, and you can find it up there now. It's got I changed a few slides late last night, but it's mostly the same. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
I just want to say to everybody, one of the things that happens is that kids don't know they can code. People tell them, you're stupid, you can't do it. Someone did that to me, and I worked for President Clinton. And you know what? That's why I'm here. That anger is burdening me so long that I want to go out and help people. And what a lot of people do is they start with stuff that's too hard. And then kids say, yeah, they're right. I don't know how to do this. But in the equity workshop yesterday, we had an example of letting people think. Examples of how to make people understand how to work together. And we need to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good closer. So thank you, everyone, so much for your attention and time.